Stellaris has had some visual upgrades in the 2.7 version, and that adds all sorts of beautiful graphical elements that basically at this point puts real space completely out of surface. Of course, there's still a bunch of really cool things there in terms of like planets and stuff like that, but wow, the main game is getting there. Something that I've been wanting for a bit of time, to say the least. However, Galactic Geography being updated also means that modifiers have been added to the game, and one of them in particular is very interesting. Basically, it adds a brand new mid-game crisis to the game that shakes things up a little bit, let's put it this way. But before we dive into that, we need to dive all the way back to the 2.0 update, Apocalypse, where Galactic Geography was actually added. Back before that particular period, we didn't have any Galactic Geography. Space was all similar and uniform. Nothing special was going on in systems. But as soon as the 2.0 update landed, black holes, pulsars, and neutron stars added all sorts of cool modifiers. Black holes, for instance, added the chance of disengaging being reduced by 50%, so your fleets were more likely to die within systems. Same thing with emergency FTL. Pulsars, a big dealio, because, you know, 100% shield nullification inside of a pulsar system is not something you want to ignore. Full shields, let's go on in. And of course, neutron stars would reduce your sublight speed by 50%. Again, a huge deal. Now, the 2.7 update added a bunch of cool systems like Tiana Vec, Alma Alveo, as well as updates to the Great Wound. And whilst all of these have new weather systems inside of them, they don't actually add any geography elements, at least not until this moment, which I think is a little bit, a bit of a missed opportunity. But then again, there's a lot of enemies inside the system that you will need to go up against, especially Alma Alveo with all the amoeba can be a huge deal. And of course, the Great Wound with a bunch of aliens inside of it, as well as the black holes, so you already have those disengagement chance modifier being added to it. Now, this is the point where we start talking about the new stuff that has really impacted the game. First of all, we're going to need to talk about Fleur. Yes, Fleur was kind of alluded to in the patch notes before, where he was listed as a entity that roams around. It is an energy sphere that roams around the galaxy, but it does a couple of very interesting things. Whenever it enters a system, it will create a local storm. A storm in space, a Warpstorm, one could almost say. Now, it won't attack you or anything. You will get a little pop-up saying that you've met it and that it is seeking for something. But overall, all it does is, well, it decreases actually the sublight speed in that system by 50%, very similar to a neutron star, but it also reduces fire rate by 15%. Now, overall, it's got 30,000 fleet power, but it has no armor and it's mostly shields. So if you use things like missiles or anything like that, you can kill it relatively quickly, which is a nice little thing that is added to the game. However, Fleur is only the first step to what could only be described as the Citrix Maledictum, because yes, there is a Galactic Storm within the game. It could potentially be described as a mid-game crisis because it does have the potential to spawn once the mid-game hits, and of course you can set when the mid-game hits at the start of the game. Now, this is when the con starts waking up, etc. Another good example of a mid-game crisis would be the L cluster, for instance, although you can rush that a little bit earlier than the mid-game if you really want to. Now, the Galactic Storm, what does it do? Well, as soon as you hit the mid-game, the game will start pulsing. Every single year. Every single year, there will be a 1% chance that the Galactic Storm will start. Now, that doesn't mean that after 2 years there's a 2% chance, or after 3 years a 3% chance, etc. No, every single year there is a 1% chance that this special event will start. Now, once it hits, half the galaxy, 50% of all stars will have the following modifiers applied to it. Sublight speed reduction by 50%. All your fleets will be 50% slower. And that right there is a huge deal, because mobility is everything in this game. Being able to project your power with your fleets is incredibly important, which means that warfare is slowed down significantly. But there is an even bigger modifier there, and that is shield nullification. It's the same bonus, or malus, if you may, as a pulsar. All shields will be useless. 100% shield nullification in 50% of all systems. And that right there is something that could be extremely detrimental to your fleets, because obviously it takes time to upgrade all your ships to something that can deal with this, because all of a sudden you're going to need to swap over to fleets that are full armor and then go inside of enemy systems, conquer them all, because I don't know whether or not the AI actually adapts to this. And that right there is something you want to keep in mind. The Galactic Geography is now applied over a period of potentially up to 10 years with a maximum, or at least a minimum, of 5 years. And as soon as the 5 years are up, there is a random timer that starts that finishes after 5 years. But obviously you could have a Warpstorm that lasts 10 years, 8 years, but no shorter than 5. That right there means that you have a window of opportunity to go out and absolutely smash anything. But there is even more to that. Let's say that you're fighting the Unbidden. The Unbidden are all about shields. This means that once the Unbidden spawns, as well as a Galactic Storm spawning at the same time, their shields are going to be useless, and you should be able to completely ram through everything that is inside of their stuff and attack their hull for maximum damage. Let's put it that way. And the best thing about this is, or, you know, not necessarily the best thing, but it could be considered to be a good thing. After 20 years, once the storm has finished, once that maximum period of 10 years is done, there is a 20-year cooldown. As soon as that cooldown is done, the 1% chance a year will start kicking in once again. And that's right. So this right here really adds a lot of flavor, because all of a sudden space weather becomes a thing. You don't know when it's coming. It randomly starts at any point past the mid-game, and then there's a 20-year cooldown, and then it could just happen all over again. And like I said, it adds a lot of flavor here, but there is even more interesting stuff that happens with this. And that is the Galactic Storm interaction with existing galactic geography, because it adds all sorts of things, because, well, it synergizes really well. Let's say, for instance, pulsars. Pulsars have 100% shield nullification, right? So you go into that system while there is a galactic storm, and it happens to apply to that pulsar. Not only will you have the standard 100% shield nullification, you'll also have the sublight reduction, as well as the additional 100 shield nullification. Now, the additional percentage does not stack, so it's really useless in this case, but there is one case in particular where this is incredibly dangerous, and that is in neutron stars. Now, neutron stars already have a 50% sublight speed reduction attached to them. If you add a galactic storm to a pulsar, and it just happens to be in one of those 50% of the galaxy, it means that you will get a 100% sublight speed reduction. Your ships will move incredibly slow through neutron stars, at least the systems that they are in. And that right there, it's curious, because you basically are like, okay, I can go to war, but I completely need to avoid neutron stars because it becomes a huge pain. Also, you're going to need to upgrade all your ships to armor because, well, what happens in space is going to be an issue. And if you're going to go into an engagement where there is a storm, armor is good. But if you happen to be in a system where there isn't a storm, all of a sudden you don't have any shields, you just have armor, and this causes all sorts of problems. So it becomes really important to start strategically placing yourself as well as your ships within systems. You're going to need to take a look at the enemy empires and see what they are doing, and specifically how their systems are laid out, and also where storms are. And that right there is something you want to keep in mind. But yeah, Warpstorms, or Galactic Storms, we're just going to call them Warpstorms, because let's be honest here, even the Chaos Gods are in the game at this point, although even though they've been wallpapered over and changed a little bit with a fresh coat of paint, I think this is relatively accurate in this case, and I'm really curious where this is going to go. Having Galactic Storms being added, having modular amounts of Galactic Geography being added in and out to the game on the fly, whilst also beautifully visualized, is a huge deal. Now, this is where you come in. How would you apply this particular system, the Galactic Storm, to your approach? Are you going to go out there and protect your allies? Or are you going to go ahead and say this is the perfect opportunity to crush those Xenos within their own hive, or at least their own homes, because, you know, Galactic Storms, they go everywhere. This has been the Galactic Storm overview, and as well as the mechanics behind it. And remember, be careful with them, because they could bite you in the ass. Be very, very careful during Galactic Storm time. I want to thank all my patrons for making this video possible. If it wasn't for you, well, I'd probably be still sleeping in a box under a bridge. But, you know, that's a discussion for a other day. If you are brand new here to the channel, or if you are a regular, I started a brand new tutorial series about 2.7. Feel free to go and check that out. It covers all the new bases that are in the game, whether or not it's the new edict system or even some of the more basic things that you may have overlooked. It's always a good time for learning, and as well as optimizing your approach on how to deal with the early game. We've covered the basics, we've covered expansion, economy, we've covered exploration, etc. So all of that stuff is all new, and it's out there, and I highly recommend for you to watch it. There's a link on your screen right now. Go and click it. It's good times. Anyway, I'm gonna go wrap this up here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves and be careful. The weather is pretty bad out there.